Welcome to the Literally First Class podcast, where I will teach you how to overcome anxiety and achieve somatic success. I'm your host, Keri Ford. I'm a somatic success and holistic life coach here to bring humor, insight, and wisdom to the modern day woman that wants to feel alive in her daily life. You ready? Come on, I saved you a seat in first class. Okay, so you wrote a book.
I wrote a book.
How does it feel?
Whew.
That good?
Yeah, totally.
Seriously, how does it feel?
It's the spectrum of emotions for sure. There's relief, there's excitement, there's a little bit of nervousness, anxiousness. Initially, I really resonate with what Cormac McCarthy, the author of No Country for Old Men, says about what most authors experience, what they inevitably experience when they finish a book, which is that they grieve everything that the book could have been but isn't. Mm-hmm. And so I, on some level, I resonate with that as well.
Yeah, I feel like I would, at least for me, being like a recovering perfectionist, I feel like I would think, it could have been better. Do you find yourself in those thoughts? Or like, I wish I included this part?
Oh, yeah. I mean, those thoughts are certainly going to come in, whether or not you're a perfectionist, because, of course, you innately want it to be well received. You want people to like it, and beyond that, even, you want people to get value out of it. Mm-hmm. You want it to serve some level of importance in the lives of other people, because you put all of this time, energy, you put all of this time, energy, and effort into creating this thing that, you hope impacts people.
What do you hope people take away from this book?
More than anything, my hope for people with this book is that they are given the permission that they need to heal and reconcile the pain from the past, so that they stop recycling it and bringing it into the present moment.
I know you and I have talked about that in our relationship, where old patterns revealed themselves and ultimately altered our ability to receive love, even when it was here. Sure. The stories that we make up or evidence we look for to protect ourselves from past hurts. Mm-hmm. And then there's the truth. Well,
the truth is that most people are running from their pain or performing their way around their pain. And most of this is unconscious. It's an unconscious reaction to pain that I experienced when I suffered from sexual abuse. I just put on a mask that had me adapt, perform, overcompensate in an attempt to not have to deal with the pain of the experience and the uncomfortable emotions that it created, the shame, the humiliation, the guilt, the embarrassment, the sadness, which set me up for a life of performance where I was constantly pushing, chasing, reaching, striving after success, achievement, accolades, where I was just propping up and further reinforcing this identity, but that ultimately simultaneously caused me to suppress these experiences from the past, where there was a lot of pain still lingering.
Yeah. In somatic work, we talk about the ability to be to build resiliency is to increase your ability to be uncomfortable, and therefore decrease the desire, unconsciously, of course, to have to cope, avoid, run away from, or suppress big emotions, hard things that potentially hurt. And so, yeah, it's an important practice that I think, honestly, I think we should be teaching it in schools, but
Yeah. And I think you pointed out a very important distinction, which is that we're not running from the experience itself. We're running from the emotions that are attached to the experience. But when we avoid those emotions and we don't adequately process them or move through them, what do we end up doing? We inevitably end up suppressing them. And so we just begin to carry them around and continue to carry around, and they're allowed to fester until we do something with them.
I want to bring it into our relationship.
Sure.
And our ability to let love in.
Sure.
And how we have literally in real time healed our own historical trauma so that we can recognize the love that is between us and really hear what it is the other one is saying, whether it be a bid for love or an expression of love, which of course in Miracles says that there's only two truths, or I don't know if they say it's two truths, but they say there's two things that can exist. It's either a bid for love or an expression of love, but the only thing that's real is love itself. And I got a lot of messages when we came back together, right? Because we had container 1.0, for lack of better word, which was about a half year cross country. We're dating. And like, that was wild, wasn't it? Just dating during a pandemic. It's kind of fun actually, because we had like the airplane to ourselves when we would travel. Yeah,
I mean, it was, I found it to be easy and both challenging at the same time, because I think it always feels on some level effortless in the beginning. When you're riding that wave of newness and new love. But eventually, like any relationship, time caught up to us, and the distance caught up to us, the constant travel, going back and forth, which at first was kind of exciting, going to a new city and being able to travel cross country to see each other because we both love travel so much. And eventually that became kind of exhausting.
We actually had never been on a flight together during the first, did you notice that? During the first part of our relationship?
I can't remember. That sounds about right.
We only met each other in cities, or you'd come to me or I'd go to you. We never actually, we were never on a flight together until 2.0. So a lot of the messages I received were, how did you get Jake to do the work? How did you do the work? How did you guys come back together? Do you think there's hope for me?
How did you get Jake to do the work?
I know,
That's a funny one.
LOL, yes. But people ask that, how do I get my ex to do the work?
Sure.
Or they let go of the person with the expectation or the hope that they'll do it, but they still are kind of waiting and not really doing their own work, probably in the meantime. So let me just, simplify this a little bit. How did we, when we basically reached that wall of container 1, where that cycle was complete, and it was, because we kept hitting a wall, which was like, hey, I want to go deeper in commitment. Granted, a lot of my tendencies were coming from anxious behavior. And you were like, whoa, I'm not ready for that. I don't know if I want that.
Yeah.
And we were like, all right, that's it. And we had a 3-month break, although I didn't know it was a break at the time, and I don't think you did either. Sure. Although there were parts of me that felt like, God, this feels like everything that I want in a man, and yet, how come you're yawning?
It's my second podcast today. It felt like a pause.
Well, I did see a TikTok video yesterday that said, if you're sleepy around your partner, it's because you feel more relaxed around them.
Oh, maybe. Maybe.
Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, so when
it felt like a pause.
It felt like a pause for me at the time, and I also fully let it go. And I focused on myself. I focused on, what is this showing me about me? And it sounds like you did the same, but I couldn't make you do your work on yourself. I don't think that. I think it's just something you and I are hungry to always do.
Well, I think it's important for people to understand, those of you who are listening, is that you and I had both been doing a lot of work consistently for years prior to ever even meeting each other.
Yeah.
So despite the breakup, we simply went back to what we had been consistently doing for years, which was continuing to work on ourselves, The breakup in many ways just revealed our next layer of growth and healing where we each got to go deeper.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important that people understand I had been committed to working on myself, bettering myself, healing myself, you the same, prior to ever meeting each other. So we just went back into doing what we had always done for years at that point, which was just continue to focus on growing, continue to focus on healing and go deeper into healing. The breakup, we would have likely continued to do that no matter what, because we had been practicing that for so long.
Yeah, I remember feeling like prior to us coming together that I found like I feel good. I feel like healed, which did not have me stop working with a mentor and doing the work on myself. But it, I did recognize, and I did have enough consciousness in that moment to know that in relationship, it's going to be a lot different. And so enter Jake, and he's like, beep, bop, boop, like all my buttons. We had a very electric, high energy in the first container that was sometimes overwhelming, at least for me. And it would leave me reeling, almost more anxious at times. And I know that we needed to go through that breakup so that we could, if we were going to, rebirth a new one. And we did.
Sure.
But the question I asked myself in that breakup that I was led to organically, I don't even remember how, but it was, how do I define love?
Sure.
And that's when I recognized, oh my God, I'm defining love as I need you to need me.
Right. Very codependent.
Well, yeah, totally. Oh, I know what it was. It was that I had been doing some work around enmeshment. I had recognized that I had a lot of enmeshment with my mom, and then that's where that had come from. And so I was unable to fully relax because when you need someone to need you, you're constantly hypervigilant and scanning external. So that was for me. And I remember we had a conversation and you started to explore love.
Oh, I started to explore my unconscious beliefs about love and associations to love. And what I came up with, you mentioned yours was, I need you to need me. Mine was, love is control. And so... How
did that show up with us, do you think?
Well, that ultimately provided the basis for how I interpreted your behavior. Despite it being codependent, despite you looking to me as your source of worth and validation, I wasn't able to receive it in the way that you intended, which is that like, I just really love you. I want to be with you. I want to go deeper in commitment, et cetera, et cetera. Admittedly, I sensed that there was this deeper level of insecurity beneath that, which ultimately, drove me away. And so there was a little bit of that going on, to be clear, but there was also my interpretation, my association of love is control that ultimately caused me to kind of rebuff your attempts to go deeper into relationship.
Yeah. So circling this all the way back to the book.
Yep.
Around letting love in, the parts of us that needed to heal in order to let love in, we healed, or we wouldn't have been able to sustain or build a foundation from there. And so suddenly, I remember when we got back together, you were like, I had this moment on a bench. Do you remember the story about the bench? And you were saying, like, I suddenly saw every bid for love that you were giving me, not as control, but as like, holy shit, like this woman loves me.
Just a genuine attempt at affection.
Yeah, but like to actually feel it and to receive it.
Yeah, I was able to receive those attempts for what they were, and I was able to experience it in my body, in my heart, and it was a really beautiful, tender moment. It was, in many ways, it was kind of overwhelming. And so, circling back to the book, like you mentioned, if we are struggling, whether it's in love or in any other area of our lives, we ultimately need to ask ourselves the question, what's blocking me? What's stopping me? What's holding me back from going deeper, receiving more, elevating into higher levels of abundance, depth of connection, intimacy, love and relationship, etc.? We have to start by addressing the things that are holding us back, because as you pointed out, in terms of resilience, we all have a threshold. We all have a threshold in terms of what we feel safe to receive in terms of love and intimacy, financial abundance and opportunity. And if anything goes too far beyond or exceeds that threshold, what are we going to do? We're going to self-sabotage, which is to just self-protect, to bring us back to what is known and familiar, what's comfortable to us. And so in many ways, even before you came into my life, I found myself doing that. It was a pattern, and the pattern always reveals the problem. And so the book basically starts with me going deep into exploration around, what is this block? Why do I have it? Where does it come from? What do I attribute that to? So that I can try to move through it, so that I can, stop sabotaging my success, so that I can stop pushing people away and go deeper into connection, love, intimacy, so that I can have more abundance in terms of my relationships. So that's where the book really starts, is kind of unpacking all of that, and start by asking myself the first and arguably the most important question when it comes to growth, which is, what are you doing with your pain? Or what have you been doing with your pain?
Where do you think most people get stuck in relationships around self-sabotage?
I think it's being committed to whatever story that we're making up. The ego wants nothing more than to maintain the status quo. And the way that it does that is by being right. And so if we have a block when it comes to intimacy, love, connection, we are inevitably going to reinforce that with certain beliefs or certain stories. And so our ego is going to continue to need to be right about those beliefs, about those stories, in an attempt to protect us.
And then, so how do you see that manifest physically? Like, what's actually happening? Because someone can be committed to a story or always being right about whatever that thing is, but how do you see that show up, do you think?
Well, I think this doesn't necessarily apply to you and me, but I think is very common and a very tangible and easy to grasp example, which is, if you find yourself consistently attracting emotionally unavailable or non-committal partners, on some level, you are needing to be right, even if this is occurring unconsciously, even if you are unaware of it completely. On some level, your ego is needing to be right about some belief or some story that you continue to maintain that causes you to attract those types of people who simply serve as confirmation bias to those beliefs and those stories. So you continue to attract those people, and you get to be right about your belief, right? Because a belief by virtue is literally that which is true. It's your truth. So if we have a bias or a belief, we are, however consciously or unconsciously, going to continue to be looking for evidence to further reinforce or support that bias or that belief. And if we can't find it, what are we going to do? We're going to create it. We are going to sabotage.
Just for the sake of taking this all the way, I know the answer to this, but why would someone do that? Why would someone sabotage? Why would they look for evidence of this?
Safety.
Yeah.
Safety. To self-sabotage is to simply self-protect. We have on some level exceeded our threshold of what we feel safe to receive, whether it's in love and relationships, opportunity, financial abundance, whatever it may be. And we need to return to safety, return to homeostasis. And so we are going to self-sabotage, aka self-protect, in an unconscious attempt to bring us back to what we know in the space of what's familiar, back into our comfort zone. Mm-hmm. So the short and simple.
To keep that belief true.
Alive. Yeah.
Yeah. Quote unquote true.
Yep. 100%.
Those of you that can't see me, quotation marks.
Quotation marks, right. Air quotes.
Right. Yes, air quotes.
And so this is why we often continue to repeat patterns. We often continue to attract the same type of people into our lives, or we are met with resistance whenever we try to elevate or get to the next level in our life.
That's where I see a lot of people give up.
Totally.
They're met with resistance and suddenly they're like, I don't know if I can have this thing. Maybe it's not for me. Or they take it as a sign that they've made a wrong choice in the direction of that desire. And I'm like, no. That's the place that you got to steady your feet and anchor in despite not seeing proof yet.
Mm-hmm. Most people run away from the resistance because it's inherently uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable.
But when we do that, we run away from growth.
Yep.
So yes, we run away from what's uncomfortable, but we simultaneously run away from a growth opportunity because resistance in our lives is not a battle to be won, a war to overcome. It is a lesson to be learned. I posted about this the other day on social media because so much of, hypermasculinity in today's day and age is all about like conquering the resistance, overcoming it, going to war with it, which fundamentally puts us at odds with the resistance rather than how can I be shaped by this resistance? How can I be molded by this resistance so that I increase my resiliency, so that I increase my risk tolerance or my threshold when it comes to receiving and being able to hold whatever it is that I'm looking to create in my life, whatever type of external result you're hoping to manifest or generate. We really have to lean into the resistance as opposed to go to war with it.
Yeah. What is it that you read me an excerpt the other day about liminal space from Father Richard Rohr? And you were saying, what is it that he says specifically around that is where transformation occurs? Do you remember?
He says that all transformation happens in liminal space, which is, it is the space in between where you are leaving one room, but you haven't fully entered into the other room. The rooms simply being chapters in your life.
Yeah, leaving familiarity, going into the unknown.
Right. Yep. You are leaving behind your old life for the sake of stepping into your new life. But you haven't yet fully stepped into your new life. So this is where we are between stages. And in that stage, there is tension, there is uncertainty, there is a lack of clarity, there's confusion. And so what we typically see is if your predisposition is safety, right, you're going to run back to that room or that old way of living, doing, and being. If your predisposition is to take risks, you're gonna run back into that room as well. Or if it's to reach and overcompensate and push and strive and effort, but in a way that creates anxiety and stress, then you're going to go right back into that. And you and I see this oftentimes with our clients who are high achievers, high performers. They've accomplished a lot in the way of financial success or external success, but on some level, they are left wanting, needing, they feel empty, unhappy, and unfulfilled. And so liminal space is this very needed and necessary season of life where we are stripped of who we are, whether it's permanently or whether it's temporarily, for the sake of refining us and who we need to be in order to step into that new chapter of life. But again, most people avoid this process because of the tension that is in that space and just how comfortable it is. And so most people are prone to try to fix this, change it, solve for it, or move beyond it. And they don't actually realize that they're doing it, but they'll often come to you, they'll come to me, and they'll be like, I want, help going from here to here. And what we often find, I know because we talk about this, is that they're often doing so in an attempt to bypass this liminal space and the inherent discomfort that one experiences when they're in the space in between. And what you and I do, of course, we guide them into the heart of their problems, which is literally to get them to stay in that liminal space for as long as they need and as long as is necessary, so that they can become who they need to be to not just like step into that new life, but stay there.
Yes.
Because how many people do we see create these wildly successful businesses, but then shortly thereafter they sabotage and the business comes crashing down, or people invite in the abundance or the relationship or the result that they were seeking to create, and inevitably they end up sabotaging it because they didn't work on the foundation first.
Yes. Yeah. And I often see even like the greatest of leaders and like the most powerful CEOs and high achieving people still, they get to that liminal space time and again, because we don't just visit that space once, especially if you're committed to growth. And it's like, is this the right choice? Maybe I don't even want this. Is this even for me? And fear talks them out of the very thing that they say they want. And that's where I feel like the power of having a guide just normalize that for them and validate that experience of like, no, you're exactly where you need to be. And I get that it's uncomfortable, but it's also necessary. And this is where transformation happens.
Yeah. And so I don't think I ever actually talk about liminal space in my book, but in many ways, that's what I was going through. I needed to fully process the pain that I experienced from my abuse in order to move into the next season of life, which is really what led me to do what I'm doing today in coaching other people and supporting other people in their pain and through their pain, so that, once they do accomplish the result that they say they want, or they get everything that they say they want, they're actually able to experience joy, peace, and fulfillment with it. Because the pervasive problem that I found myself experiencing is that no matter what I achieved, no matter how much success I created for myself, I was constantly sabotaging that success. I was constantly pushing away love, and I didn't know why. I didn't know why I was doing that. It was simply in response to avoiding pain, or the perception of pain, the threat of pain. And so I constantly found myself in that place and repeating these patterns in an attempt to self-protect. And so I had to go into the heart of my wounding, my pain, if I ever hoped to get more out of life for myself.
And what did that look like for you? Those that are listening that might be newer to spiritual awakening, and I'm going to just list a bunch of terms that people may have heard, like dark night of the soul and unbecoming and deconstruction work and an invitation into personal development. What did that look like for you? Because I think there's some people that might be like, so does it look like you're just meditating on a mountain, or like you're just like crying all the time, punching a pillow? Like, what does that process look like?
I mean, catharsis can be incredibly relieving, as it forces the release of, uncomfortable emotions. For me, I started by going to a personal development workshop, which takes you to the place that your ego does not want to go, which is into the heart of
your wounds.
Yeah. And this is why I say that your biggest breakthroughs are ultimately on the other side of the things that you are avoiding. because our ego wants nothing more than to avoid these things, because it's this infinite paradox that we see time and time again, that in our pain, we experience this incredible level of discomfort. And yet it's exactly where we need to go if we want to grow.
How did you know to do that? Again, there's a lot of people that are kind of loudly tapped and borderline, like they've got all this stuff in their life, like all this shit is fucking happening that's like going wrong. And they're like, yeah, I'm dating the same guy over and over, like same guy, or, you know, different guys, same story.
Sure.
How did you know that that was an invitation, or how did you know that that was the way through it? Or maybe you didn't.
I grew up in the Christian church, and no matter how much I prayed, no matter how much I went to church or read my Bible, I still found myself struggling with these things. And so eventually, after years of committing myself to the faith, I was almost forced to look somewhere else.
So you felt like you ran out of road.
Absolutely. And I don't necessarily blame the church, although I think on some very fundamental level, the church by and large and in general does fail to offer its congregants a very basic level of transformation, especially teenage boys and young men. And so I was forced to look elsewhere. And that's when I came upon personal development, which led me to, like I mentioned, attending a pretty intensive workshop that was split into 3 parts over the course of 3 or 4 months. And I, for lack of a better phrase, got hooked because of how much my life kept improving in terms of my relationships, in terms of my career, in terms of finances, in terms of opportunities. And that has only continued.
Isn't it cool? It's kind of like finding a secret.
100%.
I feel like I found a secret key when I found personal development. It was like, and it was less about here's a strategy and follow these steps, and more about the ability to find my own key to unlock layers within myself to really be fully expressed, deeply connected, and actually authentic to who I am.
Right. The more you do this work, it becomes less and less about achieving some type of ideal.
Right.
And much more about honoring what is most natural and authentic to you and pursuing that and giving yourself permission to pursue that because that's where your happiness is. So regardless of what you experience there, whether it's in relationship or whether it's career and finances, whether it's in terms of like visibility and opportunity and influence, because we see so many people chasing after a lot of that these days, especially on social media. I mean, everybody wants to be the next big influencer and everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to go through hell to get there. And so I think the more we do this work, the less attached we become to some type of ideal, and the more we are content to simply invest in what comes most naturally and authentic to us, which I think for me is why rather than, going out and making more money or seeking ways in which I can maximize making money, I spend more time doing the things that I enjoy doing, playing golf, cooking, that does on some level cost me money, because whenever we say yes to something, we're simultaneously saying no to something else. But I enjoy that way more than I do necessarily making money. Of course, I like making money, but that only leaves me wanting more money. Like the next level only makes you want the next level. And I think that's why many times personal development can become a trap, or it can, paint this distorted picture insofar that we're constantly chasing after, an idealized version of ourselves that is somewhere off in the future, or we're chasing a life or a lifestyle or a feeling that is somewhere out there in the future, which renders us incapable of actually experiencing that here and now and accessing that feeling here and now, which is available to us in the here and now when we become present to it.
Yeah. Going back to what you said around how you knew that there had to be something different that you had to try, like you ran out of road. I remember my moment was going through my divorce where I was like, how did we get here? How did I get here? Like, I very much co-created this life.
Sure.
You know, what is wrong here? Like, how did this happen? And that's when I knew I had to do something different. So you kind of just know. But there's so many people that don't accept that invitation, and then I get sad. Because they're like, well, I guess that's just how life is. And you're like, oh my gosh, if you just knew like how much you can create and how much power you have in you and like how much aliveness there is. But like we can't feel the aliveness. We can't feel the love. We can't let it in when there's so many other things clouding us and unconsciously directing our actions and behaviors in the name of trauma.
Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct your life, and you will call it fate.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was forced to do in many ways. We talk about there are two primary roads to achieving transformation, and that's through great love or great suffering. And so for me, that path was ultimately suffering, where I found myself constantly running away from pain as opposed to towards something bigger than myself, whether it be love, whether it be purpose, whether it be service or in contribution to a higher purpose. And so I, at some point in time, and I'm not saying that this is true for everybody, but I kind of got tired of running, and I forced myself to turn around and say, okay, what am I running from? Right? What am I avoiding? What am I pretending not to know in this moment that is causing breakdown in other areas of my life? I'm pushing away friendship. I'm pushing away family. I'm pushing away love and romantic relationship. I'm sabotaging my success. I'm sabotaging opportunities. And so I had to ultimately determine what was at the root of it all. And what I found was, great suffering. And so it demanded that I go into it in order to resolve it so that I could then move beyond it.
Yeah, I love that. So true.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us, when does the book release?
So the official book launch is on Monday, April 24th. However, in between now and April 24th, you can buy it on Amazon. You can buy the digital Kindle version, the ebook, for 99 cents. So less than a cup of coffee. So I would like to think that it's a steal. So if you're listening in, Keri will provide a link in the show notes where you can purchase the book for 99 cents. Please consider buying and sharing or sending to a friend. And then on April 24th, that book will automatically be emailed to you by Amazon. And you'll also be able to buy a hard copy of the book if you
good paper.
If you would actually like a physical copy. Yeah.
It's not very earth friendly of me, but you and I are addicted to books. Every time we see an Amazon package, I'm like, no more books. You're not fucking allowed to order another book. So where he's like, it's a gift. It's a gift for myself. It's a gift for a client. It's like, we have so many books. We have them like probably in almost every room of the house, like our little like creative pockets of, oh, but remember that one, or like leafing through things.
Yeah.
And I do want to share that if you sign up to get the pre-order digital download of the book, you also get a 13-minute meditation that Jake recorded. There are no leaf blowers in it. Praise the Lord. And it's really beautiful, the meditation, actually. I got to listen to it and help you record it, so that was fun. And then, the other thing is the reason we do the 99-cent pre-order push is because it helps to bump ranking on Amazon, which therefore increases visibility, which means more people get to have their hands on this work and really just witness you in the beginning stages or nearish beginning stages of your journey and what that looks like, especially if you're new to personal development or awakening, for lack of a better term. So to walk with you in that in the book, I'm sure is just beautiful. I actually have not read it yet. I can't wait to. It's actually kind of a weird thing to be like, oh, my partner wrote a book and I'm going to read about you through the book.
I've admittedly been keeping it fairly close to the chest.
Yeah, I was not allowed to read the manuscript.
No, I didn't want you to. I wanted to release it through a set of fresh eyes. But yeah, my ultimate goal for pricing it at 99 cents is simply number of copies sold. I could care less about money made at this point. And just to get this get this book in the hands of as many people as possible that need it, that can benefit from it, and hopefully receive the transformational value found in it.
Yeah. And those of you too that have gone through some type of abuse, that it's been, shoved down, like brushed under the carpet, and you think time heals all wounds, then you're like, oh shit, no, it doesn't. Let this be the courage, maybe, to find your voice in sharing it, because shame gets released when we share things.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Love you, babe.
Love you too.
Let's make out. Have your favorite lip gloss on.
Oh, sticky.
You love it.
I hope you enjoyed your flight, and I'll see you on board again soon.
Seriously though, thanks for listening. If you're ready to take this work deeper and upgrade your mind, I want to invite you to join us inside my Millionaire Mindset program. This is where you'll start using my guided meditations to help you overcome anxiety and experience even more abundance. When you join, you'll have access to my entire audio library. Head over to elevatewithkeri.com and we'll see you inside.